Hi, I'm Jimmy Hill. I'm the campus pastor of Cross Life Southport, and I'm with Matt Hunt, our senior pastor, and we're sitting in this sort of nice community gathering point, mate. What does this sort of place tell us about what the community really wants?
Yeah, well, I think places like this, well, we're just outside Emmanuel College where Christy worked and where I've just dropped Ben at school. I think places like this really reflect that fundamental cry of the community for connection. Brene Brown calls it the defining mark of humanity, our desire for connection. And places like this with coffee shops and residences and commercial shops and lots of parks and noise, it reflects that connecting of humanity.
And what does that sort of tell us about, or the challenge for the local church?
Well, I think there's an opportunity here that we could, in terms of our venues for local churches, particularly new ones, in new suburbs in particular, that people are crying, they move to new suburbs, they want places like this, that maybe the challenge to us to reflect the cry of the gospel for connection and relationship, that we build places that celebrate and reflect that communal and that connectedness across the whole community, not just ourselves.
So that's a little bit of a challenge to how maybe we normally do church.
Well, in terms of what we build, I think that's true because the place of worship, the traditional place or venue for a church, doesn't necessarily reflect this cry of the gospel or the cry of the world, because a place of worship is primarily about the needs of the church. It's at worst exclusive. It perhaps even could be seen as institutional, because who else does Christian worship but the church? And in a world where connection is not defined by institution anymore, I mean, my father-in-law worked 37 years for one organisation. People who stay in the same denomination all their life. I used to be an Anglican, I'm now a Baptist. The more often than not, we shift and change because those traditional institutional type connections aren't as strong anymore. It's the relational, it's the connectedness that Brene Brown talks about. It's the coffee shops, it's the school gate. A place of worship doesn't communicate that. It communicates an exclusivity. But if we could build venues that were more open and more embracive to celebrate the connection of everyone in the community, of which worship appears in it. So the primary reason is not worship by something else. That may well be that those sort of venues might better engage with this particular cry of our community at this time.
Thanks, mate.